This is not merely a building. It's a sanctuary of remembrance, a threshold where the veil parts, and minds once lulled to sleep begin to rise. This is the house of reawakening minds.
I entered in silence, intellect and despair, seeking refuge from illusions thick in the air. Walls lined with scrolls, lectures dense with light, where knowledge resurrects what was hidden from sight. No pulpit performance, no charismatic show, just a word in its purity, allowing the soul to grow. History unpacked with surgical precision, exposing falsehood, restoring vision. They taught me jurisdiction, the power of a name, how to stand in one's truth, free from legal games, from colonial codes to Moorish descent. I learned that ignorance is the true imprisonment. Not just a church, this is consciousness refined. I found myself inside the house of.
This is sacred ground, not just wood and stone. A haven for the seekers who once felt alone. Here the veil is lifted, the contract unwinds. In the house of reawakening minds. Truth is the altar, wisdom is the flame. Every soul remembered, every bloodline reclaimed. Time collapses and the spirit aligns. Inside the house of reawakening
We
minds.
speak of capitives, diminution, and trust law with grace, pulling veils from the statues that distort the race. Reverend Doctor don't preach, she teaches through metaphysical keys and universal speeches. From Egypt to Amexim, maps are redrawn, and the minds of the lost are profoundly reborn. They decode etymology, undo the brands, expose how black was a corporate sleight of hand. This is reclamation through language and tone, when status is corrected and sovereigns are grown. From natural law to the astrological signs, the cosmos converge in these sacred confines. This ain't dogma, it's the science of the divine. Every lecture a seed in the garden of the mind.
You said know thyself but gave no guide, until I found the house where illusions died. Here the soul remembers, the contract is clear. We are the heirs and the ancestors cheer. This is sacred ground, not just wood and stone. A haven for the seekers who once felt alone. Here the veil is lifted, the contract unwinds. In the house of reawakening minds. Truth is the altar, wisdom is the flame. Every soul remembered, every bloodline reclaimed. Time collapses and the spirit aligns. Inside the house of reawakening.
They don't ask you to believe, only to remember. You are not lost, you've simply been rendered, redacted by systems, misclassified by law. But the house restores what the paper man saw. It's not just theology, it's the restitching of fate, the alignment of cosmos with your birthright state. Genealogy meets metaphysics, past meets now. The veil is a lie and this house shows how. They speak a treaty, jurisdiction and name, that being black was never a rightful claim. They restore divine memory through patience and fire, raising minds from bondage in the conscious empire. No choir needed when the frequency's high. It's the house where illusions die.
House of reawakening minds, where scholars become sages and the forgotten reclaim the eternal.
Happy Holy Day, Moors, and welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists for the exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the many sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are an awakening center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, a learning experience for all ages. And we just want to welcome you here tonight. Islam. Listen, tonight's title is intentional. It's intentional. Watch the movie,
yeah,
but don't try to get a supporting role. And how true is that? Just, illustrated, as I told you, the phone call I just got.
Yeah.
But anyway, watch the movie, but don't try to get a supporting role, because what we're witnessing right now isn't just information, Grand Sheik, that's moving through society. It's narrative architecture. It's amplification.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And thank you. Get that. amplification creates emotional gravity. Speaking
Indeed.
of gravity, they talking about gravity leave it. Well, we're not gonna go there because that's getting right into the stuff.
Yeah.
That's the stuff they try to get us all up. But anyway, if you are a glitch, and glitch is who I am. For those of you who don't know, it's something that I've been working on for over 12 years.
Yes,
something.
actually, yes.
But
for
if
quite some time, actually.
Right, but if you're a glitch like me, someone who is committed to growing, learning, inspiring, teaching, creating, and healing, you have to understand something about energy. You have to understand something about energy, because energy, it actually follows attention, right? And so in attention, when your attention is unmanaged, it becomes recruitment. They reel you in
easily,
right?
Yeah.
So information is always circulating, but when something's amplified, if and it's timed and it's emotionally charged, it's asking for something from you. That's what it is.
For response.
Yeah, it's
participation.
It's asking for your nervous system.
Yeah.
It's asking for your outrage, like the call I just got. Right.
Oh, yeah,
right.
Indeed.
And it's asking for your identity. It wants you. The awareness is necessary. It's good to know, but absorption, that's optional. You can't take everything in and take it to heart and make it personal.
Informational raincoat.
Absolutely. That's the difference between watching or observing the movie and trying to land a role in it, y'all. We're not here to be background energy in someone else's script.
You got that right.
Right. We're here to remain sovereign in our own script. And when amplification begins, like the document releases, the exposures, the storms, the alerts, the real question isn't just, is it true? Right. The deeper question really are stuff like, what is this doing to me?
Yes.
What is this doing to me? What does
it have to do with you?
Yeah, what is this requiring of me? And what happens if I refuse to be recruited to enlist? What happens? Stuff like that.
Or influence.
Right, influence, absolutely. Yes. And that's where structure makes the difference, because headlines alone, y'all, don't create change. Understanding structure does. Sheik?
Yes.
It's not like, because a lot of headlines out there.
You and then some.
I hear you saying, like, you got that right twice. So.
Well, thank you, Dr. G. Because one of the most dangerous, disconcerting and dangerous misconceptions that exist among the people influenced by modern society is the belief that exposure therefore equals power, and it doesn't.
Right.
And not always. More often than not, it does not. So exposure creates visibility, but visibility without structural comprehension produces agitation and not transformation. And Dr. G, throughout history, information, some hidden, some veiled, has been surfaced or resurfaced, right? And so governments, and particularly colorable governments, have been exposed. Institutions have been scrutinized, and individuals have been named, and yet structural continuity remains. Why? Because the public reacts emotionally instead of responding structurally. The public often moves toward outrage before understanding or considering issues of jurisdiction. They move toward commentary and are moved by commentary before studying the frameworks of the things that are being presented to them. And framework is where actual leverage exists. And if you don't understand the structure of governance, the structure of finance, how it functions, what it is not, what law is not, and what authority where it's derived from, and what it stands on, then exposure becomes theater. And it stimulates, it agitates, and it circulates, but it rarely corrects. And that is why self-discipline matters, not emotional discipline alone, but intellectual discipline, the ability to pause, to assess, and to ask. And what is the framework beneath the presented headlines that are being presented to us daily, etc.? And those who design systems that operate strategically understand the psychology of repetition. And they know and are aware of the outrage cycles burn quickly. And they know emotional populations are easier to control and to predict than stable ones.
Wow.
And predictability is the foundation of control, and they're easier to manipulate. And if one wants to be within one's right of divine sovereignty, you have to become less predictable. And those, yes, and to those who are operating emotionally, and that requires study. It requires restraint, and it requires maturity to observe, for one to observe without rushing to perform, to respond to whatever the stimulus is.
Right.
And that's the difference between reacting to a script that's being presented or promoted and to understanding the stage, etc. Dr. J?
Well, what comes to mind as you're saying that, Grand Sheik, I'm thinking about, because we look at you when you're here, you look at YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I click more YouTubes than I look at any other thing that I'm watching.
Mm-hmm.
And, you see so many, what do you call them? Influencers.
Mm-hmm.
And exactly that's what they call them, because I believe that's what they want them to do. And even if those so-called influencers are calling themselves exposing the horrors of the reality of what's really going on and has been going on, and now everything is coming to light. We're in the Aquarian light, and so they're, even though they're doing it, it's almost as if, because if you realize the way things have gone, that the chaos is created, and then the same ones who create the chaos come in with the so-called solution management. They come in, so they want these influencers to influence people to outrage and to this like be aghast at everything they see, and one file revelation after they're eating so and so, they're doing they're drinking this. Pizza means that, chicken means that, cheese pizza means that, hot dog means this. I mean, we can't even, you're not even gonna be able to do it. But I'm just saying, they want the outrage. They want the same kind of excitement. And I don't know if they got too much from the Super Bowl, because I thought the little bit I saw of it had no excitement to me. But normally those games of sport, like back in the gladiator days, and now
they use them platforms to send messages.
Well, they not only do they use them to send messages, but they use them to create the energy, the loosh that they feed off of, the right? Response, but I digress, because what you were talking about, this is where it gets subtle, because many people believe strong emotion, when they're emotional, that means they're aware, they know what's happening. But many times what only thing that strong emotion proves is that they become attached. They become attached to that thing. And we're living in a time, like I said, where outrage has become identity, and people feel relevant when they're reacting. They feel awake when they're angry, and they feel like I'm in perfect alignment because I'm reposting and I'm getting this information out to everybody. But what they're doing is recruiting other people,
not recognizing they're being puppeted.
Absolutely. But here's where my glitch, grow, learn, inspire, teach, create, heal lens comes in. If you're reaching or if you're reaching that point where you're reacting on schedule, you're not disrupting anything. You're merely participating. That's all you're doing. Every time something drops and millions respond the same way, it's not disruption. It's choreography. You dancing. You become one of the puppets on the stage of another controller. And glitch energy does not follow choreography. A glitch energy, what we aim to do is to disrupt patterns, right? We disrupt patterns. If you got that glitch energy, you're a disruptor. Watch the pattern and break it. That's right. And interruption, what it does, it requires steadiness. You can't be, firmness. And it requires a nervous system that isn't constantly being hijacked.
a stoic position,
right?
actually.
And yeah, I mean, it brings us to these crazy ass storms. I mean, they jacked everybody up for 10 days or something before the great storm coming from the west to the east. No, we are in the east, excuse me, or at least that's where they say we are. Wherever we are positionally, it seems like we're in the east.
Yeah.
And so it was coming east, and it did drop some stuff. It dropped a load of shit on us. We don't even know what it is, y'all. We still trying to figure out what that stuff is out there, you know.
It
but
ain't melting too good.
We still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is they move people to clear shelves of the stores and to buy all the doggone ice melt. And it wasn't even really ice. And maybe they, you know, and it's slowly doing something, but it's not really, you know, it may be, you know, June before this stuff is gone. So, you know, but what I'm saying is that they you know, they got the people all pumped up and then they tried to put another one right behind it. And where it may have hit out there, I don't know. We're thankfully we didn't get it. You know, we didn't get that second, but we were warned, so we ran out and bought the rest of the ice melt, and they jacked the price up between the first storm and the second storm. And the bags are still sitting there, right? Right. But weather isn't new, y'all. You know it. And storm cycles, Grand Sheik, they aren't new.
You got that right.
But what's new is the amplification cycle, how they're, you know, amplifying what they've been subtly doing all along. Because we've been complaining and talking about the fact that, you know, directed
the force and the duration
dues and different, you know, the harp and the all of the various things. We've been talking about that. But what they've done is amped it up, and to the point where they want your participation. You're not just you watching the news, but they want you feeling it in your blood. They want you feeling it in your in that.
Come emotional connected to it.
Right. These constant alerts,
because actually they're using that energy.
Right. That's what I said. That moosh and the constant footage and the constant reinforcement of urgency. Like I said, and these YouTube for broadcasters, I mean, they are broadcasting the worst case scenarios, not just about the weather, but what they saw in the files.
Because they're really using the human energy to run the system.
Right.
You know, and this is back to where many humans don't know their actual bio-natural function. We're growing to know it, but many are not aware of it, and how people who know these things are actually using our mental energy to run their systems that are not necessarily in our interest.
That's true, because but a lot of folks, you know, I'm glad I study this and I'm conscious. I mean, and it doesn't mean that every now and then, y'all, it doesn't mean that every now and then Dr. G don't feel off kilter a little bit, because sometimes things come like a gut punch. But it's the recovery. It's the recovery that's important. Capacity to recover,
discipline yourself,
right? To recover from that and to realize what it is. It's a movie. It's a movie, y'all. It's not real. You know what I mean? And that even, you know, in the worst case scenarios, on both sides of the aisle, the fence, the coin, everybody's in the movie. Everybody's in the movie, you know what I mean? You know, but you know, when you need to know that, but when the body, how it affects us, when the body stays at this in a low level fight or flight situation long enough, what happens is clarity begins to diminish. You know, and you know, when that happens, your reaction increases, and reaction increases your participation. Like emotionally, and it's like that snowball effect. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It keeps growing. And whether something is natural or exaggerated or politicized, it isn't even the primary point that we're trying to make tonight. That's not the point. The point is that if your emotional state can be shifted repeatedly and predictably by these amplification cycles, then your sovereignty is unstable.
Being tapped.
It's unstable. And we talk about sovereignty in another. It's more than just, you know, sovereign as a more. It's sovereign as a who you are in your divine
to nature.
Absolutely. Whether it's spiritual or whether it's civic, it begins with the the nervous system and regulating your nervous system. And if they can get your nerves, it's just like I said, it's a snowball effect.
Yeah.
Because if your nerves are rattled, that could lead to a whole bunch of other things. And so that's why they got folks taking, ashwagandha and this, that, and a third is supposed to keep
it's
you
sort of like rattling the people, whereas if they respond to the nervous system and are not directed to actually self-discipline, as you mentioned before,
right.
They're easier to tap and to be used.
Right. But Grand Sheik, you've often emphasized that self-governance precedes any conversation about governing systems.
Well, yeah, that's correct, Dr. G. Because self-government is not just a mere abstract; it's foundational. And actually, your ancient philosophical disciplines actually promote that. Now, the corrupt persons who have been running government have actually co-opted and hijacked many of the ancient philosophies and reconstructed them in dogmatic religions, which is why it doesn't function for a lot of people. And also how a lot of people, for lack of really understanding the foundations of, say, like Hermetic law, as an example, right? And maxims of law, end up rejecting a lot of the philosophies because of the de facto government people tampering with them and then throwing the baby out the bathwater, if you get the whole point what I'm saying. But when you're aware of that, and the fundamental principles, you are more armed and better prepared for self-government. And if you do not, take a strong position of discipline, your tendency not to govern your own emotions or to control your own attention and your reactions to outside stimulus, then you're not in a position to critique or to challenge the larger structures, etc. And you may be encouraged to move from one public controversy to another as they present them to for control purposes.
Why do you think they do? I mean, why is this so much? Is there a method to the madness of the barrage?
Yes, because to control the mind controls the body, which is why so much emphasis has been put in the animal husbandry system, as an example set up by John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates in 1902, which they call the General Education Board, and inclusive with the fact that the general masses have not been aware that is actually, though it's historically headed by John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates, is actually its origins from the War Department.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, so everything has a tie-in to it. There's an end game.
Government.
There's an end game with with a lot of tributaries.
Yes. So the people don't suspect that what they have called government is actually the villain.
Wow.
And so what they have done is they will use LLC corporate entities as subcontractors to do their work, and so that they appear innocent or in the background, so-called to preserve the rights of the people, and the people never suspect or they forget that the government is an interrectum. And this is where people, after a few generations, forget that the governments operating, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, are all de facto and are colonists with a colonist agenda, the unus sanctum agenda, and they forget that. And therefore, that has allowed the people to be subject to these things. And back to what you discussed many times, there would not be in a position to critique or challenge the larger structures because they would trust them. Mm-hmm. And it'd be moved, so they're easily moved from one public controversy to another and controlled by those stimuli, right? So for them to actually consciously become more disciplined, to become more calm and stoic in their intentional studies, etc., and to have a greater understanding and therefore have better mental functional armor. And they protect their perceptions. Don't let others control their perceptions. They prevent premature reaction. In other words, they're more stoic, they're more controlled, they're more disciplined, which is what you've always promoted.
And they're very layered.
Exactly.
Layered, because there might be, let's just say there might be 15 layers, and no layer, but the layer below doesn't know what the layer above knows, and on and on. Everybody has a need to know it, and most people are working, what do they call them, in silos.
Yes, and they create space for analysis. And so people refuse or may confuse loudness with strength, right? And they may think visibility equals influence, but stability produces influence.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And when you're more stable, you can evaluate things, and then you can also be in more control of timing, and you can recognize patterns. That's very important, to recognize patterns, and you can have more grounded determinations whether something is designed to redirect attention away from actual structural examinations. And that's a higher level of analysis, often also referred to as logistics.
Wow.
Right? And higher levels require patience, but the patience comes with the knowledge, or the disciplines of studying patterns and looking at them logistically, not emotionally. Right? So if you're constantly emotionally stimulated without discipline, patience disappears, and without patience, structural comprehension is impossible.
I know, but I was thinking about, the scripture tells us we're not wrestling against flesh and blood.
Yes.
And that's energetic language.
Yeah.
That's energetic language. Attention, emotion, reaction, they all carry energy.
And they also refer in that area to talk about how to say body language.
Right. Because when something is amplified globally, it's not just information circulating, it's really it's energy that's mobilizing. And dark systems don't need your agreement. They need your reaction, because reaction is what sustains the narrative. And if you truly,
that reaction implies agreement.
Yeah.
When they're controlling your actions. In other words, they can stimulate you to act on them rather than being disciplined and steady in your own mind.
Yeah, because if you want to truly glitch, as I say, a system, you don't just holler at it.
Yeah.
You withdraw predictable emotional fuel from it, and that's what we call disruption. You draw from it. Don't let it take from you. You gain strength and knowledge and clarity and insight from it, rather than it draining you, emotionally, and especially when it's really nothing, at least at on the surface level, that one can do. Now, there's a lot we can do, because I'm not going to suggest that we are powerless, if you will, to fight against these things. But since it's not flesh and blood, and it's principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places. Spirit and versus spirit is strengthening our own spirit, our own knowledge, our own knowledge of our own power, that allows us to, I was thinking, the song, is it the Isley Brothers, Fight the Power?
Yes.
Fight the power that we gotta fight.
Yes.
But you don't fight it with guns and knives.
Right.
You fight it with the mind and the power that already resides,
it's
in
already
you.
within you.
It's already in you. Yeah. Yeah. So, people get, all caught up in, we're powerless. I can't.
That's what they want you to think.
Yeah.
But that's also with the triggering mechanisms. And once they see that the people already quickly emotionally respond to the triggers, then they're more susceptible to control for delusion. And logically, energy without structure appears, energy doesn't dissipate, but which means it's not contained.
Right.
Because energy doesn't dissipate in the sense that it disappears, it moves. Right. And so with structure without energy stagnates. Right.
Yeah.
And so what you're describing is the necessity of balance and the capacity to be, how do you say, be still? You know how they say, be still and think. All right.
Right.
And what you're describing is the necessity of balance. And you may observe without surrendering stability. You may study without internalizing agitation. So you remain informed without becoming emotionally entangled. And that is a signal of maturity. That is a signal to be cognate to preserving sovereignty.
Wow. I mean, you know, there is so much going on that we could talk about. You know, we had a discussion a couple of days ago when we were just, y'all, we have, I call Grand Sheik when I have a thought, you know, something pops in my brain, and I can't get rid of it. And I run it by him as to what, you know, if he's in agreement, because he's not always in agreement. Sometimes, you know, sometimes he gets to create the thought. It's just that sometimes, Grand Sheik, your scholarship is so erudite.
Not really.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, y'all. Sometimes he'll give me something and I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I don't know what you're talking about. I can't get into that. I won't be able to have a good discussion and so forth. And so this particular subject matter has come out of, you know, I have to be honest and, you know, full disclosure, I've seen a lot of YouTube, you know, video. I'm sure you have too, because you watch YouTube a lot, you know, and it's hard to not see like certain patterns. And that's what, you know, what we have been seeing. We've been seeing over and over, you know, snippets of the same narrative being projected on several different, you know, it isn't even much of a you know, Moors versus the, you know, colonizers. Everybody's talking about, you know, the stuff that, you know, we you know, that we're being exposed to, that is being revealed to us. Many of you, and like us, we have suspected for a long time of the undercurrents and the takings of things that, you know, are really going on. You know, we have not been in the dark. We have not been in a vacuum. We have been accused of, you know, all kinds of nefarious, you know, motivations other than trying to bring the people to a place of understanding and stability. You know, merrily we go along, and so, you know, while, you know, we go along and we do other things, y'all. I know y'all haven't seen us much, and, you know, there are some reasons why we've kind of cut back, but we, you know, it's not for lack of I would say our commitment to our call. And not for lack of that, just, you know, a lot of
time helping to uplift all humanity, to be blunt and straight.
Absolutely. It's just that, you know, you know, life, what they say, that's life be lifing, and we have to do other things to keep things going. I mean, this man is almost 80, probably in less than 24 hours. I don't know what time he came in.
4:10 p.m.
Oh, p.m. Okay, so yeah, but he still works. You know, he still has to go out. Matter of fact, before we got started, y'all, today I was showing him something happening around my back door, and he said, "Let's go to he calls it the depot. Let's go to the depot." So we went to the depot and got what we needed, and he fixed my door, right? Because that's, you know, that's your love, and that's your dedication, and all
carpentry and building and repairing and stuff.
Right. So, you know, that's just the, you know, like sort of a little PSA, because some folks be wondering where we are. But, you know, we don't want anybody to feel like they have to depend on information from us, because a lot of times what you hear, and even I hear things from other people, what it does for me, and we hope what we do does the same for you, is that it moves you to deeper investigation and study, and that you can confirm things.
And self-discipline.
Right. Because you know, what is it? When you study, he said, study, you know, study thyself, know thyself. and study. And
Yes.
when you have studied,
Study some more.
study some more. Right. And so we don't want to be, excuse me, seen as the sole source of anything.
Yeah.
Because anything can happen.
We're just helpers.
Yeah. So, a lot of times, people we start to depend on certain folks to give us.
This is not the age, actually, for that. The age is actually, I think what makes uncomfortable for a lot of people is because every spirit being is being required to manifest or to mature within the self. It is not a narcissistic position. It's a developmental position commanded by nature of even maturing within this cycle of whatever cycle that you're in, whatever your return is, whatever your present lesson is. We must mature in it. And how do you say, someone else, how they say, we've got to acknowledge or get out of the psychology of someone else bearing our crosses type thing, if you get the point. Doesn't mean that we don't assist each other, but we must start taking responsibility, accountability, and knowledgeability of self.
Right.
Yes.
And I mean, I enjoy learning, right? And like I said, but I have learned and am learning how to watch the movie.
Mm-hmm. Sit back and chill.
Right. And to watch it as research.
Yes.
And not necessarily to see what's going on as, some gloom and doom prophecy of prophetic, what's going to happen.
Objective observation.
Is that what we call it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Objective observation. Learning to watch what's going on objectively, and almost from a like what they say, a fly on the wall.
Yeah, like looking through looking through the window at a storm.
Right. You're not in the storm. You see the storm.
Mm-hmm.
It's out there, but it's not in here. And that's what I think many folks do. Don't
take it on.
Right.
Observe it, analyze it, study it, watch patterns, project the mind. How do you say you're kind of like in it, but you're not of it.
And that's, when you think of it now, so many things, when I was in that other role, and I was, relying on the word more than I was relying on even my internal, the voice on the inside. We now I can look back or listen and hear how many things I thought were just for the spiritual.
But you can look at the wisdom in it. It's for everyday living. It's actually for everyday living. It's not for belief. It's for doing.
Like this, there's the one that comes to mind. And like I said, I'm not preaching, but be anxious for nothing.
Yes.
Right. So in other words, don't let this, I'm going to be real frank. Don't let this shit get to you.
Right.
You can't let that happen to the point where now you can't think straight, or you don't know what, you pulling your hair out, or you're not able to work, or you're not able to communicate because you're not sure whether or not, you think everybody is the enemy.
In layman's term, learn to be cool.
That's easy enough.
Really learn to be cool.
And I think that's probably, do you think over these almost 80 years, what has been the secret to you being cool?
Secret.
Well,
it's sort of like
the key.
To be honest with it, it's sort of like paying attention to some things that I kind of understood at a very young age, but I neglected. Like when you're young, you don't take some of your thoughts as seriously. And though a lot of things, particularly some of the things that was reflective in my younger age as rebellious, was actually my spirit mind guiding me and preparing me for things now. It's sort of like, to be honest, when I look back, a lot of things that I evolved to, I kind of already knew, but I was just too young to do anything about, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And just like, for instance, I've always been like, kind of like, I didn't look at myself at that age as psychic. but I always had insight. And of course, a lot of that I let out in my poetry. So I started writing poetry when I was like 7.5. I had volumes of poetry, many that was lost over years. But I recognized that a lot of it was actually my thoughts that became foundational for the way I think later.
Mhm.
And I think not at the time, but a lot of the thought patterns kind of prepared me for observing life as I went along, kind of like I was young, but some stuff I saw I kind of already knew, and not necessarily deliberately, but I stood back and started observing and waiting to get some age to handle stuff. But at the same time, I was also rebellious to it, wanting to do some other things.
Mhm.
And then when things came about, I already knew better. And then later start listening,
Listening to who?
the inner voice.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, like when you're young, when you're a child, and you're very creative,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you develop skills that people sometimes look at and say, "Oh, wow, you're really creative." And then some people be testing you, like in school, and they'd be trying to jump you to other classes, and some people be saying, "Oh, you're a genius" or something, and you're looking at them like they're out to lunch, and you're out to lunch too in your own mind. But then when you get older and you look back at those thoughts, you kind of say, "Well, that was a little kind of advanced for my age, but I didn't think of it that way then."
Mm.
But they became handy. It's almost like being handed tools when you were young and not recognize them until you get older. But when you look back and you see that it was there, and you kind of look at yourself as a different person,
Mm-hmm.
sort of like it's almost like being two people. One observing yourself as you're growing, and not necessarily recognizing it until you get older, that you were observing yourself when you were young. And it's a kind of odd way to look at it, but that's really the truth.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember a lot of my childhood. You and I have talked about,
Mhm.
some of yours. I mean, I get glimpses. It's funny. I get
Mhm.
glimpses of me doing things. Me standing in front of the fireplace at my
Mhm.
grandmom's house, entertaining everybody.
Mhm.
They put me up. I was the entertainer. I remember those little. I don't remember. A lot of things. I maybe see glimpses of me. Sitting on the steps at my grandmom's house, or out down and fishing with my grandparents. And stuff. But it wasn't until I became older that I realized who I was.
Mhm.
And when I say who I was, I'm talking about who I had been. Wasn't sure of the unfinished work of who I was at the time.
Kind of like that. Yes.
Yeah, because people we look at children even today and say stuff like, "That's an old soul," and I've seen a couple of things lately where, children have said things like, "Oh, that's the wrong." I was looking at a video on YouTube the other day about a 3-year-old who saw a picture of the Sphinx and told her mother they changed the face.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, and her mother's like, "What are you talking about? That's not the original face on the Sphinx," the child said, and said that the original face was bigger and elongated head with eyes that were big and pointed upwards, and that was the one that watched over them and taught them all the things they knew, but that the king, after they left, the king wanted that face to look like a human, right? And had it carved down and chiseled away and made something different. And they kept thinking that the little girl was, how could she? But scientists and pseudoscientists and all people who've thought that there were different things going on with the Sphinx agreed with this 3-year-old.
Yeah, that was modified.
She said, I was there. She said, and we hit the head under the left paw. It's buried in a chamber under there, right? But see, the authorities won't let anybody go down like that. They recently, I think, but they haven't done that. But I'm saying
they use radar
lidar technology and stuff like that. But the point I'm making is that, you know, we sometimes are just here again to finish something, you know. And if that be true, that we're here to finish something, that speaks to the fact that we came intentionally and we've been here before. And so the fear that has been placed on society, say with regard to death and everybody dies. And if death was not seen in our, and I don't even know where I'm going concept, here, and the concept of death was not taught to us and actually pushed on us as something to fear. I mean, why fear something that apparently is natural?
It's just walking over.
It's a transition. Now, how one dies might be an issue, but for those who have had the experience of, and I don't even know why we're going there, y'all, but for those who have had the experience of what we call a near-death experience, and they'll say, well, it was in an instant and I was somewhere else. Or, you know, but we don't even know how to live because we're afraid to die.
Exactly. Now, I remember, like, even when I was in the crib, you know, standing up, and Nardy's my brother, is taking my bottle, and my mom was saying, "Give me this bottle back," right? And I remember when I died, when I was almost 2, right? And my father took me to Cooper Hospital, and they sent me home to die, right? And I remember my dad was rocking me, and he dropped me. And I remember when he picked me up, and he started sucking on my nose and sucking on my mouth. I was about 18 months, I think, about 18 months old, stuff like that, right? And so I died then, right? And my dad brought me back, you know, and most of the stuff I remember then, you know, from even when I was standing up in the crib. So most of those young, you know, to me, they don't seem like as long ago as they are. They're not like fresh, but they're not long to me.
Is it possible that it doesn't seem like it because it isn't? You know, we've been hearing more and more about parallel.
Because time is not, you know, I think from an intellectual point of view, as we've studied, and we already know that time is a construct,
right?
Chronology for registry, but it doesn't exist in the phases that we accept it as being, you know, so all things are operating actually at the same time. You know, but that's also the capacity of the mind to contain that. But for the sake of reducing or what you call stabilizing action or planning action, we construct time, what we call time chronology, in order to what you say focus, because we can also be actually in more than one, because we actually are. And that's the other thing I discovered, you know, and that's another reason why, like when you say how, you know, when you begin to internalize that and really recognize that because some things can't be expressed in words, then you learn to sit back and observe, and you know how you say you can participate and not participate.
Right. I
mean, but that's what, back to your earlier.
Well, just, you know, let's think about it. You know, we saw a movie about 6 years ago, right? And how many people participated in that movie? How many countless people? We were saying, don't do it, you know, don't do it, you know, and you know, don't do it. But we saw the movie.
Yep.
We saw the movie. We saw the, you know, like the old, you know, the scriptures say we saw the handwriting on the wall.
Yes. And this is back to sometimes, Dr. G, when, you know, like sometimes when we used to have some conversations, and I was telling you some things that I was told already not to do.
Yeah.
And I did them because I wanted to do them. So when things didn't necessarily go to, I wasn't totally disappointed because I understood.
Right. Right.
And I think that, plus when I was younger, I think, particularly in Miss Estrada's room. Now, Miss Estrada was my second grade teacher.
Oh, you remember your second grade teacher? I don't remember.
Sure.
I remember one teacher.
Classroom and
I remember Miss Fleming. I do remember her.
I remember Miss Chase was my first.
See,
I know them all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Miss Honey was my fourth. I know them all. Miss Holman was my fifth. Just like, it don't seem that long ago to me. So but this is the point that I'm making. When I was younger, when you're younger, you're not as prone to cover up as you are when you start more becoming self-conscious.
Mm-hmm.
And with my mom and my father, I think that's why they were kind of, when I look back, protective. Although I was like the kind of child brings snakes and frogs in the house. For real. You know what I mean? And I used to go out and draw plants and stuff like that and study stuff. But I would also, one of the things, which I told you before about the gray haze. Yeah, that's when if I was around people and I seen the gray haze, I knew that they were going to transit. Okay. And I used to, things when I was younger, I used to just say things. And then when I started noticing how people responded to them, I withdrew from that.
A lot of times they say that children, the older they get, the less connected they are to their past, if you will.
Yes.
And the younger children have more displays of knowledge of things that, are from obviously seemingly past lives or incarnations, whatever you want to call it.
And I used to have conversations with my dad and stuff like that, right? And my dad always was a reader, and he wouldn't even go to the bathroom without a book. And I picked that habit up. That's why I got so many books home. I got books in boxes, just like you got here. I got books in boxes and in shelves, and on both sides of my bed and bookcases, and in boxes, and in the basement, and on the first floor.
You think all that knowledge been coming through by what they call osmosis? You've been absorbing
I used to
the wisdom of the ages.
Me and Nardi, my brother, me and Nardi, we used to go junking with our little wagon.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I was like 4.5, when Nardi was 6, I was 4, right? And we'd go junking in our wagon and stuff like that, and helping Aunt Bert, who lived on the corner when I was 4.5. We'd go down there, right? And we'd take, because the junkyard was around the corner, and we'd get stuff, and I would always buy old books. I was always attracted to old books, right? Like they belonged to me, even though I couldn't read them. And so a lot of the, those habits of reading came not because I was grooming myself to that, is because I was attracted to that by nature, if you get the point.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, as I was growing up, I also recognized a lot of things that I was saying as I was growing up in school. I would always kind of like find myself being, where'd you get that from? Who taught you? How you know this? And I started withdrawing.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I got older, I started accepting it. But then I started also recognizing some things because you already know it.
True.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's also back to kind of what you were stating to me earlier. And also in spite of myself to myself, where part of my self-discipline comes from. Knowing that I already knew. But not necessarily discussing it.
Yeah, and I just think that people owe it to themselves to be free. And the reason why I'm saying ought to themselves to be free, because when you allow yourself to be imprisoned in your mind by the things that someone else imposes upon you, it's a self-imposed prison. I mean, people don't think about it that they've done that, but they've allowed themselves to be imprisoned and controlled by fears, by the scarcity, rule, the government's gonna get you, the IRS gonna get you, the Third World War, just he's not really dead, they've always been doing this, they always will be doing it. There's just a lot of things that people find themselves becoming confronting and dealing with them as if it is their own, as if it's your problem to solve.
When I was when I look back, even because I was a rebel at a very young age because of that. One of the things that probably, I think, when I look back, that always frustrated me as a child, because I had a little body and I couldn't do some things that it's sort of like, I was already thinking, like, when I was like, let me see, 8, 9, 8 and 9. So I was already thinking about working on cars and stuff like that. Right. So even though I went to school for also auto body, I kind of like fell in, because even when I went to school for auto body, they were surprised that
you already knew.
Understood leading, brazing. So once they showed me something, it was like I just fell right in. But I also discovered that in school and stuff like that, which because they try to skip me about 3 different times, and my mom wouldn't let them do that, because I was little. But when you're little, a lot of times that comes in conflict with people around you until you become older and you kind of understand these things. But when you're younger, you don't understand it. You think you're.
When you say you were little, because not your age, because you were small for your age, or
no, my age.
Your actual age. Okay, all right. Yeah.
Because I was always advanced. And then like in the 4th grade, I remember at Miss Honey's, they sent me down to the principal one time, and they had some people there, and they wanted to do some tests on me because of one. They were calling me a genius, some kind of stuff, right? And of course, I was offended, and definitely wasn't cooperating. But I remember, but that wasn't new to me growing up. I kind of like took it as an offense, not any. I didn't look at it.
You didn't get excited about I'm a genius.
Like messing me type thing.
I was listening to somebody saying it may have been today, or may have been yesterday, within the last 2 days, and they were giving an example of 2 people. So one person, do you need a college degree to become a doctor, was a question, something like that. And the teacher was teaching, I think they were students that were probably maybe junior high school age, or some middle school rather. And he was asking, do you need to, have all these years of college and med school and all that to become a doctor, versus somebody who doesn't go to med school, but goes to work in a hospital, starts, say, mopping floors as an orderly, and then observes and knows how the hospital runs, and then somebody begins to mentor them, and they learn, and then versus a person who goes, say, to Harvard Medical School, if there's such thing, and they go through these years of education and so forth. Which one, the same amount of years, but one's working through the would be most successful as a doctor? And the answer was the one that started out as the orderly or the janitor, because they were involved in the environment. They knew when the one comes out, because when they come out of college, they still got to learn.
But you know what it comes to be, Dr. J, when you really kind of look at this, and this is back to a part of what's happening even right now cosmically, that people are born to who they are, and the education system is given too much credit. Education, the education system is more political structure for maintaining caste and cost.
And order.
Caste, cost, and controlled order. And the real deal is, and this is also back to the nature of what's going on, where people are learning by divine order, what they may call the Aquarian lights, that you're already born to be who you are, and that no one can make you be. You're already that, or you're not. Now, what people can do is assist and stimulate, right? Now, so what I would look at is, what is the nature of what we used to have in culture that was being destroyed? And that is the shaman, the griots, the
rites of passage.
Yes, and things that were actually natural to beings, and that was cultivated in the cultures, was actually suppressed, and that the so-called education system was actually put in to suppress it. And in these last, say, century or more, we have come to give credibility to the controlled systems of the circle church and chanceries, universities, as giving knowledge, when the real deal is people are already cosmically kind of groomed to who they already are. And that nature of our evolution has been suppressed, and it's opening up now. That has much to do with the conflict that's going on, actually reflecting even into the political realm right now, where people think it's changing when actually people are blossoming and actually casting off the satanic suppressions or the false god, say pseudo godships of the satanics who have been running the planet, and logically with a lot of the institutions that have been built by and controlled by them are dissolving. People are going through both the personal and the more public conflicts of it being dissolved. Like people sometimes, it's sort of like even with many of the institutions that have never served the people kind of feel kind of taken back as they're falling apart, because we've built our lives around them. Not unlike what's going on right now. As an example, the credit system is getting ready to be dismantled, right? And by the people having been groomed on the credit system, they will be uncomfortable, because unless they have the insight or aware of certain things being taken place to replace that, or to, how to say, to they have one reset going on, but there's another reset that's actually superior to that, that's coming in, that some people are aware of, many are not. And so people who have been groomed to the systems that are collapsing, even though it haven't served their interest, they're groomed to it. It is not unlike people being in an abusive relationship, whether mental, economic, spiritual, political. And while that paradigm is being broken, it is being broken to liberate them, but they're reluctant to go out the gate.
But they call it, that's that Stockholm syndrome.
Yes, the Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
And it's a thing that can't be expressed in words, because it's expressed cosmically. And that's actually what's going on now. And also, and this is in the nature of actually what our conversation has been, is people becoming disciplined, self-disciplined enough to be steady, to watch things fall apart and not be threatened by it, because it's not in your interest to preserve them, even though we've been attached to them.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. What do I always say to you when I throw in, when we have a conversation? I said, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. And I said, the Lords of the land. the land,
even understanding
that they've given so many things that you mentioned, alluded to earlier in our conversation when we began, that these things are tentacles of, like, just say one brain and like an octopus with all these tentacles. So they created industry and created things to attract the mind, or to withdraw from your resources in order for you to indulge in it. They've created all these things, and now that these things are, whatever was sustaining these things is collapsing over here, now they're like, oh well, we're gonna shut down all of the such and suches. And we know the people,
not unlike the dynamics of what we talked about for years. That's manifesting in the consciousness now, not that it wasn't manifest. Like, for instance, for controlling the people, as the people start becoming more psychologically rebellious to the corrupt system, and then you would see the operators of the church, circle, church, and chancery. So when I say the operators of circle, church, and chancery, that must be understood that the Circle, Church, and Chancery is actually the Barristers Association of England that actually own and run the United States Corporation Company. And then the Khazarian Mafia, who actually run them, are also today called Israel, who really own the corporation that the people have been deceived in thinking is the country that constitutes the United States Corporation Company. Now, by most of the people not being aware of that, they're in the mentality that it is their country. They have a certain amount of respect or sense to try to preserve it as their protective mother, though it never protects them. It always abuses them. And this is like when they've adopted particularly around 1853, between 1854 and 1863. 1854 and 1863, and this was the convention they had in Philadelphia, to convince the people of this dynamic of the corporate entity being the country. That's those that has to do with the Whittemore Convention with Horace Greeley.
People, like I said, we know we never got that in school. That we were never told there was a distinction, that there was a corporation. We sang, "This is my country."
That's the
I'm pledging my allegiance, America.
Now that's the attachment, and that's what they call the parentis psychosis. The parentis psychosis is the Linnaeus and the Blumenbach, what they call today with a new name, MK Ultra, of the people being groomed in a mesochistic political format to accept the abuse of government and then pay for it with their labor, and then when their labor will not be compensated, because that's what the tax is. See, that's what the tax is. The tax is the stealing back an implied compensation that never take place. So you have the fiat, which is non-compensation, but implied as compensation, and then that is taxed too. And that's the mesochistic position of the interregnum governing body that is known as de facto, and what our people have been trained under MK Ultra to call racism, when actually it is Satanism and a sadistic structure of people whose religion actually is Baal or Satanism, who pretend to be Christians but are really Cretans. Yeah. Right. And so that's the real truth. That's not opinion, that's the real truth. But it's also the area of the political structure here that's not talked about. And that when you do talk about it, they start doing things to either ban you or to remove you. And those the dynamics of that is expressed in different formats, and loosely just referred to as Illuminati operations, etc., which means those who are illuminated, those who claim to be illuminated are not illuminated in the light. They're actually deluminated in the dark. It's always a mask and the opposite of what they present. And so those dynamics are actually what we're dealing with now, even when you're looking at trying to understand where many people don't understand the structure because they're in the psychology of parentis, that quote unquote, that's why they keep saying by training, the government, our government. So there's that psychology. It encourages them from childhood to protect the platform when actually to protect the platform is actually and factually parasitic. Now that's the truth. Okay. And so that's that whole gray area is why when people who really see through this stuff are usually targeted, because if they wake up the mind of the people who are in the mesoschistic mind, the sadists can't operate because they're also injurable. And this is the revelation. Even when, as an example, as they're talking about Epstein and stuff like that, like people who are psychic see already that what is it about Epstein that people are so sensitive about? It's not him. No. That's sort of like a brand, because the real deal is these are the things that it will expose if you just look at it, right? Just feel it. Just feel it, look at it, right? Not what they're telling you, just feel it. They've been eating children, and particularly since around 1942, and they set up all these burger joints. That's where all
allegedly. We're just saying it.
All right, allegedly.
Allegedly.
All right. That's where all the missing children, over 450,000 a year, just in North America jurisdiction, averaging 450,000. Right? Now, how that many people be missing every year and it not be commonly discussed or alarmed? We're talking 450,000, not a handful. Not a handful. Right? Mm-hmm. And when they introduced the Baal child sacrifice for the Satanists who have been pretending to be your government, this is why nothing's ever solved, because they're members. This is what people don't.
And it appears to be. Yeah, it appears that most of the system.
What Epstein is a member of the body of people that the people think should be correcting it. That's why it's not corrected. He's simply he's a sacrificial member.
Yeah, but
he probably isn't sacrificed.
Right.
He's just
moved. I don't think he is. Yeah, either. Yes. But many of the systems that led so-called systems that were set up in order to quote unquote help people, like the CPSs and stuff like that, it now appears have been complicit all along.
Oh, that's the whole point.
With missing little people who are not where they should be being treated as they should. I remember reading a book when I was just maybe around 2011 12. I came across a book called, and y'all look for this, you might look for the PDF of this, it's been out years. It was called Thanks for the Memories, and I cannot remember this lady's name, but it's called, look, just Google Thanks for the Memories PDF. And when I read that, I had, like I said, the PDF version. I remember the woman who wrote that chronicling her life, going all the way back to childhood, to infancy, being, as they're using the word now, raped and so forth by father and brothers, to eventually ritualistically to the point that they caused her to have multiple personalities, yes. and the personalities could do different things. One of her personalities actually had total memory control. So they used her to be with these high political people, one of which was one of our so-called commander-in-chiefs.
They're not ours.
Well, they're so-called commander-in-chief, corporate commander-in-chief, yes. Who she would have to come back after her trips to DC at 12 being flown there to be with this one, they would then get information, the pillow talk. She could remember it verbatim because that was one of her personalities. And they were able to find out what was, and I'm not going to tell you who it was, but something happened in Dallas. So anyway, they were able to, and thanks for the memories. If you was attached to a song that a star used to sing who about hope, and thanks for the memories, because that was one of who they were sent to be with, by her handler, who I think it recently maybe had left this planet, I guess, this time a few years ago, and it was a Henry. First name was Henry, and it wasn't, he didn't kiss you, if you know who I'm not. So she names all of these people in this book that, like I said, I read. I even looked up something like the name of her church she mentioned. It was real, in California. I found things that she mentioned, they were real places, but they tried to make this lady out to be a complete Looney Tune. And now all this, it makes, the stuff you see now, it was happening then.
It always was.
It was always happening.
This is the deal, Dr. J. The things that they're talking about or implying, in fact, were and are the standard. And the reason why these things aren't really addressed, and even when they are allegedly being addressed, they always have committees on committees, and it goes for years, and all these people in suits and ties are having discussions, and then they're taxing the public for all these conventions. And the real deal is that they're all members of the same club. Not unlike, this recent missing woman, and they got all these so-called governmental organizations with hundreds of men and women investigating. They're all part of it. And that's one of the things that when they're talking about Epstein files, is that fact. Not only allegedly your major burger joints, all these burger joints since 1942, that's where all the missing children are going.
Allegedly.
The glue factories, that's where the bones have been going.
Allegedly.
And Jell-O. Allegedly.
Yeah.
And that's what they're really protecting. On now, and these other things, allegedly, these are the facts, actually.
We talk about the movie. We talk about watching the movie, y'all.
Watch the movie. Watch the movie.
Yeah. Okay. Watch the movie.
This whole body of men and women operating in North America that have been called the U.S. government collectively, bar very few, all of them are Satanists. Number one, that's one of, we talk about Epstein files, right? 2, they are owned by the people who are really known as Khazarian Mafia, who, according to the Book of Mark, are claiming to be somebody that they're not. And this is why all the billions of credit notes from here go there every year. That's what the wars in the Middle East is about. Those are the real owners of the politicians here. That's why nothing gets fixed. Now that we're just talking the truth. This is the real politics. Now we're talking Epstein. This is what it's going to expose. I'm telling you what's going to expose is going to come out anyway. And I knew this stuff a long time ago.
I just heard something that I don't know if anybody else heard this, but allegedly,
yeah.
Gone to the Nancy lady,
allegedly
the mother of.
Let's do this some more.
The mother of the news professional, Savannah, husband used to be a cleaner for a certain former president from Arkansas. Used to fix stuff. And you know, in the media, they would scrub the media of if it's anything, you know, they would be able to go through the whatever the articles and anything posted and scrub it. Now that these two individuals are in the media, in the news, now being investigated, is it possible, the question was raised, that they wanted to make sure that the cleaner didn't reveal some of the stuff that they cleaned?
What this is the real kicker in all this, Dr. G. That really, I think, well, I kind of know it, but let's think allegedly.
Yeah,
is when the people, the reason why this stuff is being protected, right? It's not some mystery guy protecting Epstein. It is the entire Congress who Epstein is one of the members of them. The reason why, you know how, like, for instance, like you'll see them talk about what moon probes do, you know, satellites going around Jupiter and telling you how many rings there are and telling you the particles of Tiamat and all that stuff that's in the atmosphere, and yet people among them, and they be years just like Epstein, and they can't figure out anything. Meanwhile, they can find somebody in the desert that didn't pay 5 parking tickets, and they'll send a hit squad to go get them and discover them, and they'll have all these tapes and stuff, and they can't decipher these tapes. You know, because now the real deal is because they're all partners. All of them are. The very people that the general public assume. That's why a lot of times when we're talking, I'll be saying, stop saying our government, stop saying my government, and stop saying the government. Say the corporate entity of the Circle Church and Chancery, known as the United States Corporation Company, which I showed you the papers. And see, and this is another thing too, Dr. G. They've trained us to say these things because we're actually that's part of the loose energy. When we connect it to us, that's what helps save them. And people don't understand it. See, it's sort of like the art, part of the art of connotative linguistics as a social engineering art is to get us casting spells when we don't know that we're casting spells. That's why a lot of times, even when you know better, we've got to train ourselves to stop saying that Federal Reserve notes is money. That buys them time. We got to stop saying my government. That buys them time. In other words, it's sort of like, and part of it is because we know that they injure people when you tell the truth. We know that. However, if we're going to say allegedly, then say allegedly and then tell the truth. Don't attach yourself, because remember, when you attach yourself to the entity, that gives your protection to the entity. And like I told you years ago, a lot of things that would have happened here at North America has not happened mainly because of us. Our people don't know that. That a lot of things that they see happening around the world, part of the protection that is known that protect a lot of the criminality of the operatives of North America going to and fro the earth, devouring nations. A lot of things haven't happened to them here is only because of us. And our people don't know that.
Wow.
So let's talk metaphysically.
All right.
Since we're talking, being honest about this. It is the energy of our people in the parentis principle mind, not knowing that we're actually being mesoschistic. And the mesoschism is actually the indication of the energy lines of the sadistic Satanists who are actually running the government, sucking off of us. When we say my, that's an agreement.
We talked about agreements a couple of shows ago.
That's an agreement.
Kind of agreement.
When we stop saying my, they have to encourage us to say my. This is one of the reasons why they spend a lot of time always saying our demons, democracy. This is one of the reasons why I years ago that I reminded people by going to the same War Department that we talked about, where they show you what democracy really means. And every time the people talk about defending the democracy, they're saying defend the demons.
Wow.
Why? Because they've been trained to think that the democracy is a positive.
Yeah.
So even though at a young, now, in order for them to transfer the debt, the psychic debt on us, they'll train us at youth to say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. And then we train the parent to tell the child that it's democracy. So now we've set into the ethers an absolute contradiction. So it makes them liars and hypocrites because they're expressing it, but they don't know that that's spell casting because they think it's their education. So they attribute it to the teacher, but they've taken it in. Now, so when you stop connecting to the institution, it starts dying. That's why they are doing what you call these so-called influencers and doing so many of them. And so they have to start scattering the brains of the people. Why? Because the people are waking up.
Mm-hmm.
Even when, years ago, even when you start glitching and design this platform, House of Reawakening Minds, even that's the psychology even of the title. Mm-hmm. They have to counter that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's bigger than the average person looks at, because the average person, just like I will say to you redundantly, remember, Dr. J, don't say our government. Don't say my before you say congressman or congresswoman. Don't say our and then say the president of the corporation.
What makes it hard though sometimes? Training.
Yes.
But for instance, somewhere all over these 50 so-called states, the states, the jurisdictions.
Yes. Now,
people
so abstract.
People are in these offices, so to speak, representing them. They know somebody. Some people, everyday people don't. Like, for instance, I was taking, like, pictures pop up, on my TV all the time that from years going by. I look up and all of a sudden the picture is there, and it's from something from way back when, and picture popped up.
Excuse me, just for a second. I was
of me.
Oh yeah,
and our current, the state of the Delaware's current, she is, let me see, Congress.
Yes,
that's the Congress. She currently Congress.
Yes,
I was in an organization with her. Was friends with her for years and all that. There we are.
Yeah.
But it's so hard for me now to think in terms of you can't be in the swamp 3 terms and not get dirty.
You already know the deal. It is what it is. It is what it is.
You know what I'm saying? So everybody that's up there, unless they're reptilian put in place, they're known by somebody and they think they know them. They think that they're just like me. They have a family, they do stuff this. But you think in terms of, first year you go down there, you find out the stick is dirty, you get out. But when you go, now you're in the 3rd term, I'm like.
But this is what happens, which you already know. If they're not corrupted, they corrupt them.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think they went down there corrupted. No. But I'm thinking.
We're talking about how it works.
How do you get to stay in
how
that?
It works.
Unless you are, because we also know, some folks are soulless. I don't think that's the case. But we know, when you think about the Cabbage Patch incubator babies, what did they spot? Were they able to procreate and create more of these soulless
Mhm.
beings that they can put in these positions to be puppeted and whatever, or was that just a filler for that time?
It's been, put it this way, it's been before and after. Whatever time they present it, it's already done. You gotta look at patterns and understand how they function.
They don't, they repeat, right? Rinse, wash, repeat.
In other words, like if they project something to be potentially done or to be done, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they make it public, it's already done.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Meaning that they never project something in the public information stream to be done when it's made public that it's going to be done, it's already done.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that it will be rolled out to the cognizance of the people. And this is another reason why it's important to really kind of understand the real geopolitics, which is why that misinformation is so protected, so that the people still think. And one of the things that really have to be really kind of unraveled with the people, which is being unraveled, but it's just easier just to tell the truth, is understanding the parentis principle that the people have been groomed under. And that is, they are not your government. They never have been your government. They're trustees for the Circle Church and Chancery, owned by people who are claiming or hiding behind certain religious beliefs, who are really the owners of the United States Corporation Company. And the people must be aware that their misconception that this was their quote unquote government is part of what is not to be revealed, why they're protecting. That's another part of the so-called Epstein files, because they already know when that gets out, all hell breaks loose. That's why Drawley said, if he told you everything, you tear up something. He says the half has not been told. Wow. If I told you everything, you go back to sleep, meaning that it's so deep. It's so contrary to what people think it is that some people mentally will not be able to stabilize themselves to handle it. Right.
Right.
And then others will not be still and reason, just like you're saying, become disciplined, and they respond to their emotions, would be not to the advantage of the people, because we don't have the defense systems in place to protect our people.
Right.
And that their response would give the Satanists an excuse to do what they want to do anyway, what they've been doing, slow walking genocide, that would allow them to justify open genocide, although genocide has always been the agenda anyway. This is one of the difficult things for our people both to accept. And it's also another reason why they're not exposing, quote unquote, what is called the Epstein files. It's so far beyond what they put it this way. Epstein files is a cover for the reality of the whole operations of the de facto interregnum governing body, Little People Sacrifice, as a standard of operations for decades.
Allegedly.
Mm-hmm. And also, when the people are going to discover that when they're talking about the Colombo military operations, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the major things that they have been doing and that they covered up has been what? Eating our babies. From the beginning.
Allegedly.
And it still goes on. Mm-hmm. So, allegedly. Pete, this is one of the reasons why they'll put emphasis on abusive sex. And it's so far beyond that most minds wouldn't handle it. Including find out why a lot of people are sick, not knowing that they were actually, without their permission, groomed to cannibalism, thinking that they were doing burger joint deals since 1942.
How many children grew up on Mickey D's? We call them McDeath.
That's why it's called McDeath. McDeath. That's why it's called McDeath. Yeah. And even even from a response to counter karmic, what they would call counter karmic move, why one of the Khazarians even made some videos years ago, and his name was Rabbi Finkelstein, and actually said it out loud.
Yeah.
They even talked about even how they've used the Aboriginal women to help break up their own families and then use them against their own. And even when they went in the name of helping or so-called supporting, and show you how the psychology works, supporting women's rights, actually got the women to participate in little people's sacrifice in the name of abortion. And they were used in cloning, stem cell research, organ transplants, and the remaining carcasses being used for fillers in the burger joints since 42. Now you're talking Epstein files, and that's only a part of it, allegedly.
And that predates him too, probably.
That predates him. He's not. He would be looked at if they really start exposing this stuff. What they call Epstein would be looking like the naive choir boy. And it's the people around them who's been protecting them, not some mystery guy, billionaire. It's the entire Congress. The entire Congress. They're part of the club. They've been doing it too. And the political prosecution and the negative news prosecution of this person called Jeffrey Epstein is simply a narrative, not actual sacrifice to calm the people so they don't suspect that it ain't him, it's them. All of them, not some of them. And if there's one that's not part of them, they're still compromised on some other level. Now that's the truth.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
I was sitting here thinking about when you're talking about watching the movie, because I keep trying to bring us back to the title, and I was thinking about was it 1986? That movie it was a space shuttle in 86.
Mm-hmm.
That movie, remember that movie?
Mm-hmm.
That was one of those trauma, worldwide trauma presentations.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, allegedly, people from that particular terrible, horrible incident have been seen.
Yes.
And still using their own names.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Because we are so figurative, we forget, and the younger folks never knew.
They know people have a short memory attention span. Because remember, that's part of the MK Ultra training since the 30s that they've been introduced, and they've done all these things subtly, whereas people who think they're thinking aren't aware that they're still being manipulated and controlled. Back to what you were saying earlier, Dr. J.
Right.
Where people, and this is where some people who think they're conscious are still in the matrix.
You got to go back sometimes and watch the old movies to recognize the new movies. Now I heard somebody mention it, and I went and looked because I got one of those streaming. I can stream and look for movies. Found a movie called Black Dynamite. It's a cartoon, but the stuff in that movie that they were saying, and I don't know how old that movie is. It's almost like remember the so-called black exploitation films? Yeah. There was a movie called Black Dynamite.
Even that Psychosis.
But the stuff in there, very telling. But for back it was it's kind of graphic. Wouldn't watch it with my children at all. But I would, because they're old now. But I'm saying if I had little children.
That kind of reminds me too, Dr. G. Yeah. The brother who plays Superfly in the exploitation movie.
I just saw.
Yeah, you remember that the long coat stuff.
Ron, somebody.
Yeah, me and Moody made the bed for him. That round bed. Me and Moody made that.
Oh.
And those tower sides. Yeah, we built that.
Oh, you built it for the set for the movie?
No, we built it for him personally.
Oh,
yeah,
didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's right. You do. I know you build a little bit of everything.
Custom stuff.
Yeah, but
and round, circular, matching the bed mirrors on the ceiling. With speakers in the headboards.
Yeah, but even those movies, like I said, the period of so-called black exploitation had an agenda.
Yeah,
and they wanted us to watch those movies because they wanted
psychology of introducing or glorifying the drug trade,
the pimp,
and
the prostitution, pimping, and
denigrating women.
Right.
That's what that's designed for, and making it look like it's sophisticated or what you would call a goal to
something reach. To be to aspire to
look up to.
Yes, and so we've been,
and it's destroyed a lot of people in between.
Yeah,
and destroyed a lot of relationships and families.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just think about how many movies have been presented and are being presented. I'm hoping, and we hope that after this, even though we digressed and went into, because this is a twofold presentation tonight. It's like you said, we're counting down to the 80th solar return of our master teacher. So, but we wanted to talk about, we should have had some popcorn, shouldn't we? Put some on the picture. But it's a movie, and we want you to know that much of what you are looking at is theater, and not to get yourself attached to it, not to don't become emotionally invested in what you see and what you hear. Use your own power of discernment, your own mind, if you will, to realize, what they used to say, is it live or is it Memorex?
Yeah, and I'm so glad. I'm so glad and thankful too. Sheik Bey started the school for Moorish children, online school. Protect some of the children, many of them, and look how much time has passed, and how many children, that have been moved away from that psychological weapon of the John D. Rockefeller mind control system. So I'm grateful for her patience, for having maintained with all the pressures, maintain the school.
Yeah, there's just so much that is going on that we need to just pay attention. I know I think I did a message one time called "Pay Attention or Pay the Piper."
It's the truth,
and you have to. Yeah. Right. So it's hard sometimes to separate your emotions from things that that actually grab you, because we are emotional people.
Well, that's why they weaponize it. And this is, again, Dr. G. Wise, is really important for people to know the parentis operations, and we brought that up over the years, and you've talked about it. And even though people have heard or even looked at it, the fact that many people look at it as an information and not recognize that it's actually a functioning weapon, and has part to do why, even as we're having these kind of conversations, why sometimes you can be years and still not get through to people, because they really don't know that the governing structure is weaponized. It hasn't been co-opted. It was weaponized from its structured beginning.
We can go way back to radio and the War of the Worlds and
same thing,
stuff like that. The Los Angeles, thingy with the, you've got people saying that 70% of what you see and people are seeing in the sky actually is coming from back engineering done by the government. right? And not
Yes.
necessarily in any, and then you think about it in terms of, you know, these impending, you know, 3-eye this and this coming. If that's the case, and we do believe that there is life out, we don't believe we're the only ones, we don't. But if it's the case, they could have done away with us along, and could have and should have, probably by the actions, if you will, of the people. That is not what they're trying to do. They're trying to peacefully coexist, it seems. However, folks in the government like to stir up the hornet's nest to get people all up in arms and in fear, so that they can profit from, you know, the runoff, the loosh, the energy release.
This is the now. Notice how even when we're looking at these things and sometimes we're analyzing it, we're still talking as if the people in the government are separate from those operations, when they're the head of the operations. And the corporate entities are subdivisional contractors to divert the people's attention to the corporate entity and not to those who they are actually paying taxes to, thinking that they're in place to protect the people, when they are the parasite. They are the mother. That's the real issue of the Epstein files that people still dancing around, still aren't getting. They're still not getting that you're looking at the real vampire. The real vampire is really the people that you keep calling government. This is why there's no solution. Let's look at this intelligently. Although people are discussing people like Epstein, etc., as an example, right? Ghislaine and all this stuff. You can tell the times that these people have been dealing with, and the people are alleging to be government, have all these sophisticated instrumentalities, technologies, institutions funded by the billions, and they've been operating on this stuff for years and can't seem to get any movement. And it's always some mystery unknown person who's protecting these people. No, it's them. You know, and this is one of the things that people are going to have to grow up in their maturity and get over and accept. The people have to shed the parentis mentality. As the people shed the parentis mentality, the Satanists, in other words, the revelation and the exposure is not people necessarily telling. People have been talking for years, for decades. They don't hear them because they don't know the psychosis of the parentis mind. That's what the unveiling is. The unveiling is really not outside. It's actually within the parentis mind. As the parentis mind is being attacked by those who really understand the psychosis of these sadistic operations, that's when what is called the real exposure takes place. It is really the shedding. See, because it's back to, they live because the people are still giving them energy and not knowing that they're giving them. You know, people think they're awake. And as soon as they say my government, my congressman, they've just reattached. They just gave them a new vein. We've got to, you know how, like what they say, another way of saying it, people need to stop professing the Jesus principle and actually encompassing the Jesus principle, and understand the Jesus principle analogy is really a metaphysical demonstration of humanity being dark and light. And so it's not a religious worship principle in the sense that people have been trained it is. It means as humanity is moved and the waters of the mind is parted, and the sections of the brain, the hemisphere of the brain, and the dark side and the light side is more manifest. And so when the people need to understand, when the metaphor about Rome and about Babylon, etc., to cut through the chase, to put it in real terms, it's the U.S. corporate operations, including their minion, who actually owns the corporate U.S. corporation company, that are occupying a piece of land that don't belong to them. That's the real Satan. And that's the reality of the Epstein files that they're covering up. And that's why it's being covered up. And that's who the real protectors of this person, which is a brand named Epstein, really is.
Interesting thing I just saw where a guy who does a lot of matchups of pictures of folks living today versus folks from back in the day. And he matched up Jeffrey Epstein's and Ghislaine, or whatever her name is, Maxwell's picture. His face matches up exactly with President Andrew Jackson, and her face matches up with his wife's. And they were talking about that energy, you know, coming. I don't know what Jackson did, but it would be interesting to see what it was that Jackson was noted for, because apparently he might be that same, you know, that same energy came back, and they got the same birth, same marks, they match up everything. But listen, we hope that you have enjoyed this. Got some more that want to share.
Yeah, just casual talk.
But you know, since we're celebrating. The year is 1946. I'm going to transition, y'all. The year is 1946, and want to see what was happening, because you know that was the year when the master teacher decided that he needed to make an appearance. St. Louis Cardinals, they were the World Series champs in 1946.
Interesting.
In sports, huh? In sports, in the NFL, the champs were the Chicago Bears that year. The ABL was the Baltimore Bullets. Don't think they still around. And the Stanley, they might have different names. Right? Ravens now. They went from Bullets to Ravens. And the Stanley Cup champions were the Montreal Canadiens. I think they still around. You know, the music they were playing, 5 minutes more. Yeah. You came in, you're like, 5 minutes more. That's all I need. 5 minutes. Now you can stretch that out to 100 years, but 5 minutes more. Rumors of Flying was this is the music of that day, but and Frankie Carlisle was singing that, and the Ink Spots was singing the Gypsy. I don't know them songs. Anyway, what else?
What do things cost then?
Oh well, a dozen of eggs cost 59 cents, and a pound of bread wasn't about a loaf was a pound was 10 cents.
A loaf of bread was a pound of bread. A pound of bread. By the pound.
A pound of bacon was 53 cents. A pound of steak was 52 cents, y'all. And a half gallon of milk was 35 cents. And it was probably in a glass bottle.
Yep.
Who else came?
Who was born? Who else was born?
Besides you?
Yeah.
Donald Trump. Freddie Mercury, that rock singer.
Yeah.
Sylvester Stallone. George G.W. Bush.
And Bill Clinton.
And Bill Clinton, you came in because you knew that some characters was coming on scene. You had to come and really dilute their power. We needed something for us. Population in the world was about 2.43 billion at that time. Was it like 8 billion now? So, okay. Truman was the president, and we know that Truman was making some deals.
Yes,
he made some deals that, you know, probably some of them got blamed on Eisenhower, but Truman, we know, was the one that made them deals with them outer world peoples.
Yep.
And what were the movies that were?
How to say the real.
Yeah. What was that? What movies were playing then? Song of the South, Notorious, Duel in the Sun, and The Best Years of Our Lives. Okay. And then
what about some of the things we used to use, the inventions?
They invented in 1946, they invented the waterproof diaper.
Tupperware.
Tupperware was invented in 46. The credit card in 1946. I know it was back then. And I don't know what the cozy dog was, but it came.
They had it.
But they had it in 1946, right? And what else was happening? Slang, words they were using. Cute girl. Now it's pizza. No, I'm sorry. Cat's meow. Cookie rather. Cookie meant cute girl. Now it's girl. Cat's meow meant the best. Buzz meant the excitement. You know, what's all the buzz? They still say that.
Yeah, they do.
The buzz.
Yeah, what's the buzz?
Gig is still a job, an occupation. Ace, which is a top-notch expert. Those are the slang words. And in the news, ENIAC, ENIAC, was the first electronic computer was unveiled at the University of Pennsylvania. So it's close by.
In Pennsylvania?
In Pennsylvania. Right. So Santa Claus Land opened to the public at Santa Claus, Indiana. And Mother Frances Xavier Cabrini became the first American saint to be canonized.
That's interesting.
Well, thank Cynthia, Cynthia Martin L. For this presentation for you.
Oh, thank you.
That you could post
Thanks, Cindy.
What was happening in 1946.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Listen, tomorrow marks the 80th solar return of our beloved Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey, y'all. And 80 years means witnessing repetition. It means seeing cycles and that younger generations think are unprecedented. And what longevity teaches is that urgency is often temporary. Principle is enduring. You don't stay steady for 80 years by chasing headlines. You stay steady by understanding structure and refusing emotional recruitment. And for this standard, in Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey, we have to be grateful for that. We have to be grateful for that because of his unwavering commitment to his calling, countless thousands, perhaps millions know who they are and who they're not, somehow they know, And so at this time, I'd like to acknowledge the following supporters who contributed to your milestone 80th solar return. Can I do that?
Yes.
I want to
to yourself and to them. Highly appreciate it.
Well, we gonna just this, yeah. So honoring those who extended love and honor Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey's 80th solar return, and that would be Justin Garris, Walter Jackson, Addison Davis, Narosami August. I hope I didn't mess up your name. The second, Justin Thwaites, Renee Griffin Bay, Cynthia Martin L, Chris Harper, Blondell Sykes, yours truly, Fatima Bay, Sabor L, and the House of Reawakening Minds. With gratitude and respect, the torch, it continues. All right. We're celebrating you.
Much appreciated, you
all.
Like,
as I said, but as we prepare to celebrate Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey's 80th solar return, I want to say something. I want to say something from my heart. And there are moments in time that are not simply born days. They are markers of transmission. Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey's 80th solar return is one of those moments. For more than 40 years, he has stood as a disciplined scholar, teaching law, civics, jurisdiction, history, and structural understanding with consistency and precision. Thousands across this country and around the world have received erudite instruction through your work. But beyond information, he has transmitted something greater. He's cultivated thinkers. I'm going to speak to you. You've cultivated thinkers. You've mentored scholars, and you've strengthened foundations, many of whom that you've directly instructed have since become teachers and scholars in their own right. And that's not influence. That's lineage. That is the ancestral torch carried forward through disciplined minds. So while we are deeply grateful for the 12 individuals who have already extended love offerings, we also recognize that his impact reaches far beyond that number. And so I want to gently remind everyone watching that even though we mentioned a February 7th, 2026 suggested deadline, for the $80 love gift in honor of his 80 years, it's not too late. If Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey's scholarship has strengthened you, and if his words of clarified something for you, if his consistency over the decades has meant something, anything in your life, there's still an opportunity to show that appreciation. There's no pressure and no fixed requirement. Whatever amount you can afford, for us, it's meaningful. Whether that's through the Zelle or PayPal, a money order made payable to the House of Reawakening Minds, even a silver coin, your gesture matters. And this isn't about obligation. It's about acknowledgement. Milestones like this don't come around often. 80 years is a lifetime. More than 40 years of teaching is a legacy. And legacy is not measured in applause. It's measured in minds strengthened and torches carried forward. So if you feel moved to be part of honoring this ancestral torch, the opportunity remains open, and we give you much gratitude and respect. And whatever you do, we will receive it in a spirit of love and respect. And at this time,
and I appreciate the love and the considerations of all too. That's, it's the thought is greater than the things.
I know you, but it's more than 12 of us that you've impacted. And so, we are appreciative to those who, as they would say in the church, thought it not a robbery. But I thank you for this time of sharing and reflecting, over some of the things, and for those that don't know, look, 777 777s, people up there that, about 100 folks dropped off when I started talking about finance, but it's okay. But for those who don't know, when I think about you, I always come back to that tale in 60 something, 65 or 66, when that voice told you to get up and leave the airport. And when he got up and left the airport, went AWOL. 66?
Yep.
Went AWOL. And that plane that he was supposed to get on
crashed on Gene Orchard's ranch.
Crashed, and it
killed all my friends.
Everybody died. I think it was 98 people on there with the crew, and he would have been numbered. He would have been 99 had he not heard a voice to tell him to leave, and to leave now. And so he went AWOL to be here today in 1966.
You would have seen them people's faces when I went back to headquarters.
Listen to me. Listen before you go there, though. But I'm just it's seriously. When I'm thinking about it now, Grand Sheik, you went AWOL so that I could meet you in 2011.
Yeah.
And you changed my life. And before that, and since then, you've changed so many other folks' lives. You had to be here. And we have to think more highly of those like yourself who have sacrificed so much for so long. Because you've always told me you could have wanted to leave a long time ago.
Yeah, 37 actually.
But I thank you. I thank you for 80 years and all of the years that are coming after it. Don't leave until you finish.
Hope I did some good. That's, I'm happy for that. And you're much appreciated for your patience and your development and the many people that you've helped along the way. Even as you was moving through your life,
it's not about me.
Before you even made your ascended transition, you still had that spirit of aiding people, which is what led you to even your, would say, a reawakening on top of awakening, because you already had those seeds that were already in you.
Okay.
They just sprouted. And again, thank you for your caring and your considerations, and all of the people who showed their love and gifting, and the intentions and the goodwill is what I treasure even more.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful that we met, and I'm grateful for all the things that you've taught me, all the things you've done for me, and that you've done for House of Reawakening Minds, and so many others. so many others. Yeah. So I just, I just know that your heart is pure, and your heart is always for the people. And when I talk about people who know people, a lot of people see you on platforms, but I get to sit next to you. I get to talk to you on the phone, or go thrift shopping with you.
Mm-hmm.
Leave you in the car for 5 minutes and end up being a half an hour while I thrift shop. But thank you.
But you already know I enjoy being out with you when we be shopping and stuff. You already know.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Those of you who, like I said, want to support, is flying. It's underneath there. Of course, you can always, text and ask how. 302-345-0500, and we appreciate it. We just want to say thank you to you. And like I said, we're not discounting those 12 people, but you have affected us far more. And of those 12,
if I've done
4 of us
good,
are work with you all. Cynthia, Chris, Sabor, and myself are part of the House of Reawakening Minds.
Yes.
So, but we appreciate you.
And I appreciate you all too.
Yeah. So
it makes it more than worthwhile for me. There's no sacrifice to me, because it's just doing what I'm, feel like everybody, it belongs. You know how they say it's everybody's job, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I certainly do. And I appreciate you, and I'm sure the people do appreciate you also. And we are we're gonna move on. And let me see. I don't know. I'm gonna post. There was a couple of comments that I had starred while we were going before we go. I don't want to people. This one in particular can kind of concern me. It says, since Grand Sheik had an NDA so young, does he have any ideas about whether we see our loved ones again after death? Just lost my mom and only want to go where she is.
Yes. Yeah. So a couple times my mom, because we were very close too. My mom visit me. Not lately, but years back, and my father and my brother. So, and my sisters. As a matter of fact, I was on the way down here. So sometimes I have to remember, be honest with you, that they're gone, because sometimes even with my consciousness now, I'll be thinking, oh, let me call Matula. She's not here.
Yeah.
Let me call Sakira. She's not here. And my brother, because I even more lately, I have more connection with them, as if they're not going, and I have to catch myself sometimes not calling. I know it might sound funny, but I never looked at it that way, but I absolutely feel that way.
Look,
so that's absolutely true.
But sometimes, though, our loved ones come back, in sometimes it's years, and sometimes it's not a short time.
My little mama.
Yeah.
That's why I call her mama.
Yeah, because you see your mother in her. I see my daughter in my granddaughter.
Yes.
And my mother saw her mother, who transitioned when she was 7, in me. Right. So a lot of times
they never get used to it, because that will be more commonly accepted as the Satanists are moved out of power.
Right, because the reason why they covered it up so much is because it didn't work with the economy of the business of religion.
To actually to block our development.
Right.
Because the economy is not even what people think it is.
Yeah.
It is all for control. It's sort of like no different than we have when we bought the door stops, right? Like the wrapper that's thrown away. That's the economy to them. The psychology of us accepting it as money is the purpose, but not the function. And I think people are learning to get out of the psychology that there's no such thing as them being broke in the fiat system. The fiat system is not a broke system. The fiat system is what it is,
Right.
the illusion.
Mm-hmm.
When it breaks, the illusion of breaks with us, it breaks their power.
Right.
So when they talk about fiat bankruptcy, that's a lie. Because you can only be bankrupt with the real.
Wow.
So the bankruptcy is the control of our mentality. The parentis mind is what they're losing. And we have the parentis mind that must be broken.
Right.
In other words, that's the spell. And like you were saying earlier, Dr. G, the thing that what they want to do is make us think that we're powerless.
True.
To give up, because then we can be devoured. It really, so the deal of it is they can mess with us. They're allowed to mess with us. They're not allowed to take us unless we willingly go.
Right.
When we give up the parentis mind, their system dies. And this is another reason why.
When you say parentis mind, are you saying like we look at them sort of as a parental authority, like a parent, like you would respect the parent?
Remember, because we've accepted, when we say my government, my congressman, that's the parentis mind.
Okay.
When we recognize them for who they are, they're really Satanists who have been personating as our government. This is back to like when you see people talking about the democracy distinguished from the republic, or you see people talking about restoring the republic. And when you see that they don't really, they're saying the civil platform response of dissolution, but you can tell in other parts of their language that they really don't comprehend yet the metaphysicality of the reality of what they're saying. Because when they're saying that, they're saying politically that they have shed the parentis mind. If they don't know that that's really where they are, they're still in the gray area. And that's where we are along the path with the masses. Although they're coming more and more out of it. A lot of times when we're discussing certain things, because we talk about many things, Dr. G, and you'll see certain things that I'm sometimes boringly redundant about because I'm attacking Satan where I know his heart is. In other words, I've made the discernment of this. I make the discernment of the distractions that are seen more important when I know that they're distractions, because I already know where to place the blade.
Right.
And I don't allow them to feed to attach my ego and then make me get off point. See, no different than, because I know that, in other words, the mission is to slay the parentis mind. But the people think the parentis mind is their own. That's why they protect it.
No.
They think, quote unquote, those people are their government. That's why they keep allowing them to continue, even though they may complain. It's sort of like the people have adopted the culture of laying on the bed of nails and thinking that the screaming and the complaining is part of their evolutionary culture, as opposed to a rejection of the sadistic operatives. They don't see it that way until they recognize, not because we say it, until they recognize Satan for who he really is. And they remove their own bias, because their bias that they don't know that they're protecting is what's protecting them. This is why a lot of times you can point out to Satanists and they're in a gray area of accepting what you're saying, even though the evidence is there. Because psychologically, the parental's mind wants to, even though they're being abused, to protect them as parent. This is why the governing de facto interregnum operations treats the people as wards.
Incompetent. Yeah.
So the psychology of them being your protectors, even though they may be a little bit wrong. No, they're demons. That's why they said they have deceived the whole world.
Yeah.
Because while they have seeded and built their nest here, in other words, their coven, even though the seat is Rome, their coven is at the north.
Mm-hmm.
This is their coven. The focus, this is why, like, our people, when our people start studying the social political dynamics of themselves, part of their ego is involved. And if they can remove their egos and just observe, they'll notice that, as an example, if you stylize this here, even though we're at the bottom of the pole, right, that'll influence people in Russia, in the UK, in South America. If we come up with something that we think is cool,
and we have,
yes, you'll see different tribes and nations around the world will start imitating us, and our people will wonder, they'll say they're always copying us. How come they're mistreating us? Because we collectively don't know who we are. When I say who we are, that we are the firstborn of the ancient Moabite Canaanite who fell. And they'll start projecting the dynamics of what they would call the Jesus strain or the bloodline of Jesus type thing. When we know that Jesus is a password for justice, we know it's Yahshua. But the issue is to understand the Moabite bloodline is really what they're saying, or what they would say, like, for people who don't understand it, for people who know the culture, right? When they say Sufi,
mm-hmm.
right? Sufi, they be thinking Islam on certain level, and that's not what it is. Sufi actually means the woolly-headed ones. So the woolly-headed, that's what Sufi actually means.
So
Sufism is really the philosophies of the woolly heads, which is the Moabite, which is the Jesus bloodline, which is why we're so mistreated. So the Jesus sacrifice is really the demon breed attacking the Moabite bloodline. It's just giving them metaphorical stories. It doesn't mean that we're all good and that they're all bad in the concept that it places it. There's a gray area, but as a body, energy, what it expresses. So this is why the demons mask themselves as Jesus. That's what's expressed in Thessalonians 1 and 2, and also in Mark, where they're claiming to be what they are not. But what it really means is that they're claiming the estate or the bloodline that they're actually seeking to murder. And so in order for the people who have been put to sleep, and they'll do the story like the one buried in the hole with the coat of many colors,
Joseph,
that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Those are metaphors for meaning that the one who is really of the birthright is actually being robbed on multiple levels. So same thing with Genesis with Rebecca. This is why they renamed Matawaka Rebecca. So they renamed Matawaka, who is what? The potentest daughter, heir of Wahansunukuk, of the Powhatani Confederation of the South of the North Gate. So they rewrite her in history as Pocahontas. See, so she's 3 names removed. So the energies. So this is why they put that obelisk on the borderline of Mary's land and Virginia. That's where Virgin Mary comes from. So if you know the codes, and this is why, like, for instance, like people who know the workings look at those books differently because they know they're metaphorical anyway and allegorical. But anyway, I'll let that go.
Well, listen. So here's where we land. Before we even go there, I want to acknowledge. I see. I started a couple other. Okay, I see that our brother, the real Kush Day, is in the house, and
right.
Looking to have him on. We have talked a couple of months ago. Got to get him back on the show.
Yeah.
For y'all who don't follow him. I mean, I think it's on TikTok or Instagram, but it's fire that he's spitting out every day on there. So Islam, brother Kush, it's good to see you.
Islam.
Somebody mentioned Eyes Wide Shut. I've seen that movie, but that movie is one that it does tell a lot. I think it got allegedly the director got deleted as a result of the stuff that was revealed there. So yeah. And then somebody said this, and I had to start this. Would love to be there to prepare food for y'all, for you all. We love you to be here too. I eat like a bird, y'all. Lately, y'all know I'm a little different than I was a year or so ago. But would love to have some good food. And we actually are Grand Sheik having, and I should have had the actual flyer. I was hoping I had it ready to put up, but we are having. I'm going to read this. How about this?
Yes, you're going
to save the date. Let me, y'all. I'm just going to read it because I don't have the flyer, but I do have this. The return. Friday, March 27th, 2026, 7 p.m. This is going to be on our website. I'm going to get it put on the website. 7 p.m. it starts. It's the return of our fourth Friday civics classes. It says civics returns, not politics, not performance, not confusion, but structured understanding, lawful foundation, self-governance in a governed world. An evening of discipline, thought, and clarity. Civics, we asked for a 20-note donation. And then on the next day, Saturday, March 28th, we have also starting at 7 p.m. It's called the Real New Year celebration, aligning with the spring equinox. That's light and darkness
with nature.
And come into balance. We gather intentionally honoring at that time. That's where we're going to honor the 80th solar return of Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey and the 71st
and yours,
my 71st.
Together.
Solar return on that day together. So we coming together. It's a BYOB, be DJ, and some guest artists. I'm going to confirm about 3 different artists that are performers that, we ask that you dress to impress us, not gowns and stuff like that. Just don't be, looking shoddy. The celebration for those 2 days, it's normally 20 anyway for our fourth Friday. For those 2 days, it will be 50 notes. But if you go to one and not the other, it's just 20 for the Friday, but it's also 40 just for the Saturday, or 50 for both. And so it'll be on the website. Yes. So if you want to, like I said, 2 days with Grand Sheik, myself, Teach, Lady J, some surprise guests, entertainers, recording artists. And we probably even get Grand Sheik to sing. Y'all know he among the other things he does, he is a vocalist. So we will have that flyer out, but just wanted to give you a heads up on that. Anyway, so here's where we land. Watch the movie, y'all. Study the symbolism.
Thank you all for sharing tonight.
Yep, observe the timing, but don't try. Like we said, don't try to get a supporting role, and don't volunteer your nervous system for emotional exhaustion, because
they're attaching. They're trying to save themselves.
That's what it leads to. Now, glitch energy builds. It doesn't falter. It grows, learns, inspires. It teaches. It creates. It heals.
Yes.
And that said, I want you all to stay tuned for forthcoming information about glitch.
Yes.
Something that I've been hinting at for almost a year now, but we're working on since about 2012. About 2012, and how you've been
holding up, doing everything else,
and how you can become part of what we're building, not as a spectator, not as background energy, but as an active participant in something that's structured, something international, something that's transformed. Glitch isn't just a mindset, and you've seen my stuff. It's a movement of disciplined awareness. It's a community of people who refuse to be emotionally recruited into every passing narrative. It's about mastering your energy, your focus, your growth. So if you've been feeling, that nudge, if you've been sensing that there's more, then this is your moment to kind of lean in. More details are coming. And when they do, you'll have an opportunity to step out of supporting roles and into a purposeful alignment. So we ask you to stay ready, and we thank you again for being here with us. And we know things are gonna change.
You got that right.
Right. So with that,
so we know storms pass, exposures will circulate, narratives will evolve, structures remain. Master structure, master discipline and emotion, and govern yourself. That's sovereignty. Islam. We appreciate each and every one of you. And let me see. I'm gonna put this banner up since I think I am. I'm gonna put this up. This remembering. Okay. As we that's when we was over the house the last time. We had an event over House of Reawakening Minds, and I shot this picture. Somebody said it was AI, but no, that's the actual may use something to help me make the flip. But the picture is the one I took. I was so surprised it came out looking like a painting. But anyway, remember, those of you who still want to show your love and appreciation in any manner, in any amount, it's scrolling at the bottom that you could do that through via Zelle or PayPal. And we appreciate it. Just make sure if you send it that you put a note that it's for Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey's 80th solar return. Peace and love until we meet again. Islam.
Islam.
This is not merely a building. It's a sanctuary of remembrance, a threshold where the veil parts, and minds once lulled to sleep begin to rise. This is the house of reawakening minds.
I entered in silence, intellect, and despair, seeking refuge from illusions thick in the air. Walls lined with scrolls, lectures dense with light, where knowledge resurrects what was hidden from sight. No pulpit performance, no charismatic show, just a word in its purity, allowing the soul to grow. History unpacked with surgical precision, exposing falsehood, restoring vision. They taught me jurisdiction, the power of a name, how to stand in one's truth, free from legal games, from colonial codes to Moorish descent. I learned that ignorance is the true imprisonment. Not just a church, this is consciousness refined. I found myself inside the house of.
This is sacred ground, not just wood and stone. A haven for the seekers who once felt alone. Here the veil is lifted, the contract unwinds. In the house of reawakening minds. Truth is the altar, wisdom is the flame. Every soul remembered, every bloodline reclaimed. Time collapses and the spirit aligns. Inside the house of reawakening
We
minds.
speak of capitives, diminution, and trust law with grace. Pulling veils from the statues that distort the race. Reverend Doctor don't preach, she teaches through metaphysical keys and universal speeches. From Egypt to Amexim, maps are redrawn, and the minds of the lost are profoundly reborn. They decode etymology, undo the brands, expose how black was a corporate sleight of hand. This is reclamation through language and tone. When status is corrected and sovereigns are grown. From natural law to the astrological signs, the cosmos converge in these sacred confines. This ain't dogma, it's the science of the divine. Every lecture a seed in the garden of the mind.
You said know thyself but gave no guide, until I found the house where illusions died. Here the soul remembers, the contract is clear. We are the heirs and the ancestors cheer. This is sacred ground, not just wood and stone. A haven for the seekers who once felt alone. Here the veil is lifted, the contract unwinds. In the house of reawakening minds. Truth is the altar, wisdom is the flame. Every soul remembered, every bloodline reclaimed. Time collapses and the spirit aligns inside the house of reawakening.
They don't ask you to believe, only to remember. You are not lost, you've simply been rendered, redacted by systems, misclassified by law. But the house restores what the paper man saw. It's not just theology, it's the restitching of fate, the alignment of cosmos with your birthright state. Genealogy meets metaphysics, past meets now. The veil is a lie and this house shows how. They speak a treaty, jurisdiction and name, that being black was never a rightful claim. They restore divine memory through patience and fire, raising minds from bondage in the conscious empire. No choir needed when the frequency's high. It's the house where illusions die.
House of reawakening minds, where scholars become sages and the forgotten reclaim the eternal.